Great. Next up, we have Dr. Thomas O'Toole, who's head of the School of Business here at WIT. Tom received his Fulbright scholarship recently enough. It was in 2013, where he conducted his research at the J. Mac Robinson College of Business at Georgia State University. So looking forward to your presentation, Tom.
Just to congratulate Jimmy on his role in the Fulbright alumni. It's really, really important, and he's one of the friendly faces you meet early on, usually taking photographs. So at least you're not doing that today. But I suppose that type of commitment is fantastic to see. But also acknowledge Colleen and colleagues in the Fulbright organisation. Really, really brilliant organisation to deal with. And incredibly professional, so that's kind of a fun side to it too. I have to say hello to my colleague who's coming on last, Felicity Kelleher. If she's listening, come back soon. We miss you. One of the things we'd like to try and do is encourage students to go. Because very much it has been the preserve of staff of WIT, so really we'd love to get our own students to try and take a bit of time, go away, learn, when you think of the size of America and the ideas therein, and how you can participate in that. So that would be very, very important. I'm originally from a very small place on the west of Ireland, so in a way, when you grow up there, you grow up very familiar with America. But with a certain part of America, with the America of, that's Boston, New York, Boston, New York, Philadelphia. I have lots of connections and have had over the years lots of connections in those places. So like John, really, in a way, I ended up in the southern part of the United States, which I knew very little about in retrospect, and which is an incredibly culturally rich part of the United States. And I hope I get a bit of a chance to say something about that. And I had two choices at the time. One was to go to Penn State, or the other was to go to Georgia State University. And I chose Georgia State primarily because I knew more people there than I did in Penn State. I know that mightn't be a great way to make a decision, but it ended up being a great one from a cultural point of view. I knew an awful lot about the United States, but why go and why apply? It was a gap I always felt in my own education, not spending time in the United States. Because if you're in a business school, the US dominates globally business ideas, business education, and generally US authors are on the forefront of global thought. Still, if you look at the numbers of publications or in any of the top journals. So I'm going to talk a small bit about my research, although I worry about doing that. There's 4 or 5 people here who might actually know what it is, and everybody else, I hope I can keep your attention on that. A small bit about the teaching and learning side of my engagement whilst I was in the States. A bit more about the community engagement. One of the brilliant things about being a Fulbrighter, as Colleen said, everybody knows you there. And I had another entry ticket as well, because my job here, when translated into the US, is you're the dean of the business school, and that gets you into loads of places as well. So the two things combined, I mean, anyone that I needed to get, anywhere you could get access to them, which was brilliant for the research, because one of the project I'm going to talk about is we collected empirical data on high-tech startups. Which is kind of a bit of a risk because there aren't always that many. So if you think about that, and getting access to them, there's no list, for example. But I'll mention those in a few moments. Where I was hosted by the J. Mac Robinson College of Business, and I was there for 5 months. This time 2 years ago, I wasn't thinking about WIT. I suppose making your way around Atlanta is I only used a car when I had to travel somewhere outside Atlanta. So I used a public transport system, which, people nearly run over you with their car if they can. It's very much car driven. So you're very much the minority, and you look like a minority compared to the users of public transport. And colleagues at the university would often say to me, "What's it like?" So, I mean, it's just interesting. And the university itself was located downtown Atlanta. And, of course, the population of Atlanta is very ethnically diverse, but also people tend to live in certain areas. So downtown was very much a Black American part of Atlanta. Then you have Midtown, different again, where Georgia Tech is, and then you had, the Buckhead, which is another skyscraper part of it, which is I suppose, the money flew to that side of the, and that was very, very, not that I would notice. It's only I actually noticed it when I went to New York, that. How diverse, there's lots of different, every day you wouldn't notice it, but you'd certainly notice when you move out of it. My own research area is in intercompany collaboration. So when organizations come together to collaborate, to create value. And I'm particularly interested in when organizations come together or companies come together to really, really cooperate very tightly. So that's my kind of area, as it were, and I'd love to have the citations that John has. I'd be doing really well. It's a very niche area. Whilst over there, I worked on two projects. One was the first one I'm going to talk about, which is about developing network capability. It's the ability to connect into resources of others. Of other organizations, and I'll talk a bit more about that. And there are two papers really that will emerge from that over time, and they'll be the two papers that made possible by the Fulbright grant. And there was also an empirical study done as part of that with colleagues in myself and a colleague in UCC, Georgia State University, and the University of Alabama. Which is a neighbouring state. I was going to do the accents of all these people, but I'm going to give up on that because they had great fun taking off my accent. So I was going to try it, but I won't do that. And the other project, which I decided I wouldn't talk about today, is a very, very theoretical piece of work on the theory behind this area in relationship strength. So, as I mentioned there, my area is on this deep end of collaborative sharing. Mainly we think of business or organizational collaboration as self-interest. And why do you collaborate with somebody? You have an interest, you have a gain in mind. And that's very much the neoclassical, if you like, view of, the neoclassical economic view of collaboration. Self-interest seeking with guile, buyer beware, all of these things that you kind of hear in your mindset. But obviously, there's a bit more to it than that. We talk about mutual benefit, and then lots of other words. I have a few of them there. No business is an island. Everything is connected. Or what's called social embeddedness as well. The things are really, really far more connected than we'd like to think they are. And we're economically dependent on other organizations for our survival. So that's the whole, if you like, the underpinnings of the area. And in terms of, it would be analogous to this guy called Fiske's communal sharing. So it's this deep, very deep interconnection between organizations. And there's a lot of different cooperation between organizations. I'm really interested in this very, very specific piece. It's very, very tight, very, very connected. And I just gave you one example there. People often share across organizations information and knowledge. As required. If you're working with somebody in another organization, you'll send them information, you'll share knowledge. What I'm really talking about on that one dimension, which is a kind of a process dimension, is imagine the power of real collaboration where you get creative bursts of ideas and knowledge creation among people when it's more open. So that's just one of the dimensions and process. But these archetypes, if you like, are very, very different. Some of the applications is a lovely, from the early 90s, a lovely example of what this company in the US called Silicon Graphics, which developed chips for car engines and way back when. And they called people lighthouse customers, and they had a project with Nissan. And you know, the engineers would come back and over between the two companies and talk about the future of what they'd like their cars to do. So a very engaged model of idea co-creation. And so co-innovation is one massive area where collaboration, high-end collaboration can really, really work. As a way of responding to change, we often respond to change by closing down the hatches and doing what we can. But actually, if you respond to change together, it can be a much better way, potentially, of coping with it, particularly in a competitive session. And value co-creation is another huge area as well. We often look about what we can get out of something, so value exploitation. But when you think about it, if everybody looks at it that way, yeah, the pie is divided. But what if you look at it in the way that you can, if you co-create, you're going to create more and a larger pie. So the space between, really, I'm interested in, and the kind of value that can be created in that space between. And this particular aspect, network capability in entrepreneurial firms, you know, these firms' ability to maintain and utilize relationships to access external resources. What kind of activity to leverage people? You know, this networking thing that we talk about. I know so-and-so and can connect with so-and-so. That's part of it, of course. Finance, technology, solutions. There are loads of, I suppose they're free resources, really, in a way, out there. But interestingly enough, we became the first to realize that entrepreneurial firms have to develop it. It doesn't come. Actually, most people set up their own business or organization to be independent and free, not to collaborate. So hence this whole project about this emergence of this capability, this ability to connect and access to the resources of other organizations. So where are we coming from? We're answering the how question. So we've developed a model of how firms go through and develop that access to other resources in their early stages. And if you think about, if you're a tech company and you're in a growth phase, you're very hungry for resources, incredibly hungry for resources. You want to grow quickly. It's not really possible through your own resources. So you're going to have to access, in a minimalistically, capital markets. But probably more likely you're also going to have to access partner resources of varying types. And you know, you can't contract that. You might have a good non-disclosure agreement. You might have lots of other things in place. But that's not what I'm talking about. This collaboration is beyond all of those kind of borders. So we looked at this emergence of this capability, because it's not something you might come inherently. You know the way people might say you're a good networker or something else like that. Maybe. But people aren't good at sharing in general. So you move beyond that. To show you a picture, not a great picture maybe, on your right-hand side there, what we found that this capability is made up of three things: awareness, information sharing, information acquisition and sharing, and action. So this process, or how to access, you have to go, if you think about it, from cognition to action. You have to think differently and act differently. So there are three phases, if you like. Awareness, just being aware of range of networks and what you can get out of them. Information acquisition and sharing, not just being able to go and get information from other actors, but being able to share something. Much more difficult test of doing. And then action, which really is, when you think of an entrepreneur, or any of us, what are we generally good at? Problem solving. But using that resource to joint problem solve, which is much more complex. Because you're doing it with somebody as opposed to on your own. So the other things in the that's what comprises emergence of network capability. The other things are things that might impact there, which I won't really go through. So what we managed to do with this particular, we managed to get and identify through some of the things I'll talk later on about 100 or so firms that came and worked with us, and we did survey work on them. I'm going to show you a small bit of stats, very small, because my importing to PowerPoint wasn't great. But what we did with the data to see if this model worked was we used a structural equation modeling package. Now that doesn't really matter, but what you have there are the factor loadings and correlations which show a certain amount of support for the model. And then more stats. The top half proved that it might work. And the bottom half, one interesting thing I'll pick out from there is the age of the entrepreneur. That's one of the other variables that came into it. And it actually, interestingly enough, it's a very high correlation, covariance of minus 0.66, which really shows us you were going to be involved in joint problem solving less as you got older. Interesting. So an older entrepreneur was probably less likely to use that particular part of the model, which does sort of correlate. So the top half really shows that this model had great potential. And they were still, I mean, it's not like on the scientific side of publication, this takes ages to work on. So I'm here 2 years hence, and we're still working with this data and showing how this model might work. Whilst I was over there as well, in addition, got huge access to the teaching and learning system in the United States, which I knew a lot about, but wasn't as heavily involved as I managed to be whilst I was there. I was involved in doctoral education, both sitting in on PhD vivas, but also in professional doctorate vivas, which are open and which you'd be invited along. I obviously gave lectures, which hugely interesting to do in the States, just from a presentation and engagement point of view and the type of things that they asked you. Massive embeddedness in the department and what I was doing. I visited all the big universities in Atlanta. Georgia State is one, but Emory and Georgia Tech are the two premier universities. The year I was there, Georgia Tech's budget was $800 million. Just if you think of the dwarfing of the Irish system in comparison. So got to visit those, and we shared a visit there. The University of Georgia in Athens I was in as well as part of it, and the University of Alabama, because there's a collaborator there. One of the things, being involved in entrepreneurial pitches and seeing what they do there, it's like going to the theatre. And seeing these elevator pitches in theatre and so on, brilliant. Another view, the United States leads a lot of what we do in learner assurance and getting into some of that. I could have given an alternative lecture on the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Georgia, which is really multi-layered. I engaged with 18 organisations or networks for entrepreneurial firms. So I've been all over the place. In these organisations, in their incubators, or part of their collaborative community, where they have online communities. Some of these are private sector communities with 3,000 or 4,000 members of people who connect. Something we don't have in Ireland. There are lots of ideas for engagement there. I was involved with a group of serial entrepreneurs as well, whilst I was there. A finishing point is I'm very interested in I'm very interested in theatre and art. So the cultural side of Atlanta, I was really blown away by that. It's an incredibly central place in America. From a business perspective, all through South America, but also through Asia, where it's positioned in the United States, which is very, very interesting. In Atlanta conurbation, there's 6 million people. Headquarters of Coca-Cola. I meant to say that at the start. Ireland is virtually unknown, even though we have an Irish consul there. Stereotypes reign large. But in terms of the history of, they see themselves as different Americans. part of America, but very, very different. And it's fascinating. And of course, Atlanta is the home of the, centers of civil rights and also to the Civil War in America, which, makes it fascinating to uncover all of those type of variables. For me, as well as a full-time academic, it's great to go in with your backpack every day and sit in the library and sit in your office and work away. I'd say I did more work in the 5 months than I do here in a year, and enjoyed every second of it. I just thought, wow, what an opportunity, what a privilege to have this time. And as an academic, we're always searching for time. And this is one great thing, time to share with colleagues. And for me, it wouldn't have been possible at all without my brilliant colleagues here, right across the Institute, who facilitated me to go. And I'm not going to even try and pronounce ye all, but without everybody, we are all connected. So thank you very much, and try and do it.